More than a dozen pro-life groups have filed lawsuits against the Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum and National Archives. The lawsuits come after the March for Life rally when pro-life students and their chaperones were kicked out of the buildings because they were wearing pro-life gear. Capitol Hill correspondent Erik Rosales has the latest on the case. Erik?
After this year's March for Life, groups of students visited the National Air and Space Museum and the National Archive Museum. They were wearing pro-life gear, hats and clothing. However, staff asked them to remove it or cover it up. The problem is these facilities are not privately owned. They are funded with American tax dollars.
Smithsonian, last time I looked, that's part of the Washington, D.C., the National Mall, our democracy, history. And you've got a guard that tells people wearing a pro-life hat, y'all got to leave. Y'all can't wear that in here. That's embarrassing. The guy, number one, should be reprimanded and then fired.
Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville, along with more than 24 Republican lawmakers, wrote letters to the Smithsonian and National Archives demanding answers. Quote, as a federal entity and the recipient of more than $1 billion in federal funds every year, there should be no debate as to whether the First Amendment applies to the Smithsonian. We are deeply concerned about this unjust expulsion of young Americans from museums, subsidized with taxpayer dollars, for wearing apparel that your staff disagreed with. Republican Senator Rick Scott also signed the Smithsonian letter and tells me this is another attempt to silence the conservative voice.
You can't wear, because you're pro-life, you can't wear your hat somewhere, anywhere in this country. And so why is it, this is what the radical left does. They want to, their goal is they have to silence everybody, right? Thank God we have kids that are pro-life.
He adds what the kids had on their hats, rosary pro-life, shouldn't be offensive to anyone. Others wore T-shirts that read, life is a human right. Republican Congressman Ronnie Jackson tweeted, quote, the fact that pro-life students were cursed at and kicked out of the Air and Space Museum by Smithsonian staff is a disgrace. People need to be fired. This should have never happened. Staff at both museums have issued statements of apology. They also say all those involved have been retrained. I'll continue to follow the lawsuits. In Washington, D.C., Erik Rosales, EWTN News 9.